Thank you. Hello guys, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Good
Hello.
afternoon, ma'am.
Am I audible? My voice is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll take out the mask and talk to you. So today we are going to have exercise on the practical aspect of the physiology. Okay. So far, you have studied hematology experiments, and you know that there are three components in the physiology: the hematological aspects, then we have human experiments and clinical experiment. Okay, so hematology you have studied regarding the blood cells, and you are going to study in human experiments so many physiological parameters you are going to measure. Okay, so in clinical experiments you are going to learn how to do the clinical examination of different systems. So in today's experiment I am going to take you through one of the human experiment. Have you started human experiment? Any class has been taken on human experiments? Yes? Unmute and reply. Any class is taken? Okay, so today I am going to take you through one of the human experiment which is called as spirometry. Just a second. Okay, so this term, whenever we are measuring any parameters of the human subjects, we are going to call it as metry or meter or graphy. Graphy or metry, we call it as. The procedure which includes measurement of certain things is termed as graphy or metry. Okay, and the instrument which is required to measure is called as meter or graph. Okay, and the outcome, ultimate result of these procedures will be called as gram or graph. Okay, so these terminologies need to be remembered when you are doing or going through the human experiments. So today one of the such experiment we are going through is spirometry. Okay, so before that we'll have to understand what is this spirometry, what exactly you are going to measure, and whenever you are studying any experiment you got to study it under like the principle involved, aim of the experiment, the apparatus or instruments or the materials required to carry out that particular experiment, then the procedure proper, after that observation, you have to depict or show whatever your findings are, then calculation if any involved, after that report. So this is how we go step by step. Just to repeat, the principle, aim of the experiment, materials or apparatus involved, then observation, calculation, then report. So in this way we are going to carry out the experiment and also we'll represent the answers. So this spirometry, as the term explains, spire refers to the breathe, to breathe. Spire refers to the breathe, and metry or meter is the measurement. So what are we going to measure here? We are going to measure the amount of air inhaled and exhaled. Okay, through this experiment, the amount of air inhaled and exhaled in different phases, whether it is during inspiration, normal expiration, or deep inspiration, deep expiration. So different phases we are going to measure the volume of air. That is what is called as spirometry. And as I said, the instrument which is required to measure particular aspects here is called as meter. So instrument involved here is called as spirometer, and ultimately the graph what we get, the graphical representation what we get is called as, this will be called as spirogram. This will be called as spirogram, and this instrument is called as spirometer, and the procedure involved is called as spirometry. Let's see in detail about this. What is this spirometry? It is a method of assessing lung functions by measuring the volume of air that the patient or the subject is able to expel from the lungs after maximum inspiration. It can be maximum inspiration or normal inspiration. So overall, we are measuring the lung volumes, volume of air in the lungs during different phases of breathing, whether under normal condition or deep or forceful inspiration and expiration. Right. Then there are different types of spirometries. So one is called as simple spirometry. Okay, one experiment what is involved here is simple spirometry. The second one is called as recording spirometry. So today we are going to discuss both, though virtually we take both the practicals independently here, but today I'm going to talk initial classes of both the experiments together. Once you are back to labs, we are going to demonstrate these practicals individually, and you will have to perform them individually and report them. These two are separate in your record book if you see. But today I'm going to highlight both of these one by one. So first, coming to the simple spirometry. Why it is called simple spirometry? What is its use? Right? So what is its application? How it is useful for us? We are going to study under simple spirometry. So this is mainly involves, simple spirometry mainly involves recording of vital capacity. We are going to record only the vital capacity using simple spirometer, or in this procedure only vital capacity is recorded, right? So we'll describe this step by step. So what is the aim of this particular experiment? As I said, it is to determine the vital capacity by using a spirometer. Spirometer is the instrument required. And also we'll see the effect of posture on the vital capacity. How this vital capacity is going to change in different positions of the body. That also we are going to study in this particular experiment. So first we'll record what is vital, how much is the vital capacity in given subject. Then we are going to see how the change in the posture is going to affect the vital capacity. Okay, can anybody define what is vital capacity? Yes, anyone? It's been covered now. What is vital capacity? Anyone? No? Preeti? Samir? You are not ready. Yeah, please. Yes, repeat again.
Yeah,
Your voice is not clear.
we just started it. Volume is higher.
So how you define it? You calculate it using different volumes. How you define it? What is it exactly? Okay, we'll discuss it. So next step here is we need to know what are the apparatus or instruments or materials required to carry out this particular experiment. So as I said, for spirometry, what we require, the instrument is called as spirometer. It is simple spirometer. that means there is some other form of spirometer. So what required for this vital measurement of vital capacity is called as simple spirometry. There are many other names for this particular instrument. Just note down the other names for the same instruments are student spirometer. It is also called as student spirometer or non-recording spirometer or vitolograph. All means same. These are all names given to the same instrument, simple spirometer, non-recording or student spirometer or vitolograph. Okay, this is a very simplest and easiest method used in the laboratories, especially for teaching purpose. There are so many other advanced instruments which are used in hospitals and research units. But for the purpose of demonstrating and making you understand what is a vital capacity, what is its importance, how it is measured at the first year level. So we use this simple instrument. Even in clinical side here also, the same instrument can be used. But we have many advanced instruments for all these purposes, right? So this is how the instrument looks. This is the simple spirometer, which has got a cylinder, metal cylinder here, okay, which is connected to a this black thing, whatever you are seeing, is a corrugated rubber tubing. This is corrugated. This may not be so clear to you when you come to the practical halls. There you will be seeing this is corrugated rubber tubing fitted with a metal mouthpiece. This portion is metal mouthpiece. Okay. So this is double layered cylinder. Double layer, I mean, you can see there is one more cylinder inside, which is inverted and immersed into the first outer cylinder, and the top of it is connected with the chain. I'm not sure whether you will be able to appreciate this chain which runs over the pulley. This is a pulley which is graduated, which has got the markings on this with the central needle in it. The purpose of this is whenever this inverted cylinder, which is called as bell, moves along with the air movement, so this can be recorded over this circular disc, which acts as a pulley also. It has graduations on it, it has a needle on it that moves along with the movement of this bell. In between these two cylinders, you will find it will be filled up to 3/4 of this cylinder will be filled with the water. The purpose of this water is it acts as a air seal and also helps in smooth movement of this bell. It is very lightweight. The bell is very light. The purpose is it should be moving whenever the person is breathing through this corrugated rubber tube. The lower portion of this is connected to this outer cylinder. There is one more cylinder inside it in which the air will be filled when you are blowing through this, and that makes the bell to move up and down. This bell is going to be moving according to the breathing you are doing through this corrugated rubber tube. Okay, the height of it can be adjusted using the screw provided here. There is also a counterbalance, counterweight for this bell, which is present in this particular rod-like structure. It is hollow. Inside this, there is a counterweight with which the bell keeps moving up and down like this. I know this is very difficult to understand with a picture. When you come actually to the lab, we are going to again show the different parts where you will be able to understand better. So this is about the instrument. So it is, the capacity of this is 6 liters and it is filled with the water. 3/4 of it is filled with the water, the purpose of which is for the it acts as an air seal and also for the smoother movement of this particular bell, which is moving up and down. It is exactly like this. The bell moves up and down with the air. Whenever air is pushed inside, it moves up, the top of which is connected with the chain which runs over the pulley. So whenever the bell is moving, the chain is moving and the pulley moves. When pulley moves, the needle also moves along with it. Right? So this is how it works. It's very simple to perform. Very easily the practical can be done. Now let us see the next component, that is the procedure. How the experiment is done. So before performing the experiment, the person need to be explained thoroughly, like what exactly you are going to do. You have to little bit explain and show, demonstrate how he should perform. Okay, how the procedure has to be done. He should practice it before actually taking the readings. He should practice, because suddenly if you do once, the reading may be wrong because of technical aspects, because he may not be performing properly. So you will have to explain the person thoroughly how it should be done. So what you have to do is, you first clean the mouthpiece with antiseptic solution mixed with the water. Thoroughly wash it and dry it with a clean clothing. And then ask the person to keep this mouthpiece in his mouth with a proper, no air gap should be there, properly lips closed. And then you ask him to blow out by clipping the nose. He'll have to clap his nose and then blow through the mouthpiece completely. Okay, to record vital capacity, what instruction is given is, first he had to normally breathe twice or thrice. Then he has to take a deep breath, inhale deeply. After clamping the nose, keeping the mouthpiece inside and blow out completely. He should blow out completely, forcefully, as soon as possible. He should blow out complete air. That is one recording. When he is blowing out, the air goes through this and the bell will move. Accordingly, the circular disc will move and the needle over this will also move and show the reading, which are marked in ml. Which are marked in ml. You can convert them into liter also. So note down the recording. So this is done when the person is in standing position. So this instruction has to be properly given. The person has to stand, look at the movement of this circular disc and blow it out, complete blowing. He has to do through the mouthpiece only. There should not be any air leak outside. So he has to close the lid properly around the mouthpiece and blow inside the vitalometer or vitallograph. That is one recording. The such recordings you have to repeat twice or thrice. Maybe one recording may not be so reliable. So minimum of 3 recordings you should take and note down. Okay, this is the simple procedure of recording vital graph. Now our second aim was to know the effect of posture, change in the posture over the vital capacity. So what you have to instruct the subject next is to sit and perform the same thing. Now we are going to instruct the person to repeat the same thing in sitting position. So in both these pictures, if you see, the person has not closed his nostril, but that should not be the thing. When you are performing, you have to completely close so that there is no air escape through the nostrils. Whatever air you have inhaled has to be completely blown through this pipe and it should be recordable. So that is the purpose. You have to completely clamp. Unfortunately, I could not get such a picture, so I am showing this. So next step is to make the person sit and try to record same thing. So you ask him to inhale first, deep inhalation, clamp the nose, keep the mouthpiece inside and blow out completely. This is what he has to do and record again for 3 times. This is one posture what is changed from standing to sitting. Next, we are going to change the sitting position to lying down posture. Ask the subject to lie down in supine position on the table. Then same thing has to be performed. Same procedure need to be repeated in lying down posture. Again, you have to take 3 readings. Is this clear? Is this procedure clear? Any doubts in this? Anyone? Any doubts you are getting? The procedure is clear? Someone answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts in the procedure?
Yes, ma'am.
You understood, no? Very simple steps. Just have to blow. That is it. That is the procedure. That is why it is called simple spirometry. Understood? So next is, what is the next step? Next is the observation. You got to record vital capacity in standing, sitting and supine position. Take 3 readings. Okay, take 3 readings. Here you will have to take the best out of all 3. Say for example, here it is 4000 ml, here it is 3800 ml, 4200 ml. So you will have to take final reading as 4200 ml. Okay, best out of 3 you will have to take. If you are taking 2 readings, then average of 2 you will have to take. So this is how in all 3 positions, 3 readings with the best of 3. Those will be your final values. This is how you are to present your observation table. Okay, positions, 3 different positions and the readings and final value. Write down your values here and take the best in 3 positions. These will be your ultimate values. Next, you will have to write the report. How you will write the report? In hematology experiment, how you write the report? Yes, you have learned this. How to present the report? What are you write in report? Yes. Anyone? How reports are written? See, unless you interact, it will become very boring for us to take the classes. Yes? Okay, fine. Yeah. Somebody's unmute. Please tell me how the report is written.
Name, age, the details.
Okay.
And
What else?
then whatever value you get, and then the normal value, and then you write whether it is within the normal value or above or below.
Very good, very good. That is the way. Here also, thank you, Ishika. Here also we are going to write the same way. So first of all, you have to write the name of the person on whom recording has been done. Whether it can be you yourself doing it, or your friend will be your subject, or any subject provided by the department. Okay, so what is the importance of name? Why name has to be mentioned here? Any idea? What is the importance of name? See, everything you write here has got some significance. What does this name indicates? By name, what you will understand? Any information the name gives? Yes. So in India, the name can give us a rough information regarding the religion of the person. Okay. So that is one of the factor which helps us in coming to conclusion of certain diseases. So that is the importance. Another thing is identification and recognition of the patient. That is why the name of the person has to be written on the report. Next is age of the person. Why age is important? Because so many parameters are not uniform in all the age groups. Physiologically, I am talking. If you take blood counts, if you take blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, certain parameters are different in different age group. So that is the reason it has to be written, age has to be mentioned, because whether the parameter recorded in him is matching with his age group or not. Okay, so if you take a red blood cells, if you take a child, is it the same with the adults? It is quite high in children compared to the adults. So likewise, we have to compare that particular parameter with the respective age of the person. So that is why age is important. Here it is, when we are recording vital capacity, it is very important, because as the age advances, the vital capacity goes on decreasing. So age has to be mentioned, then the gender of the person, because all the parameters are not equal in both males and females. That is the reason mentioning of the gender, because specific diseases are particularly common in male, or some diseases are common in female. So it is necessary to mention the gender of the person. Then occupation. Again, occupation of the person is very essential, whether he is actively doing certain work or sedentary life he has, or he is exposed to certain dust, noise, or any kind of harmful agents. The occupation gives us idea whether he works in the fields, whether he works in the AC controlled rooms, offices, or he runs around, or he carries the weight. All these things matter, or he's a sports person. How occupation matters is, in this way, the parameters, physiological parameters are going to vary, or they are going to get affected by his occupation. And also, when you go to the clinical side, it is very essential, because certain occupations are common in certain group of people working, like say for example, if they are working in some chemical factory, or where they are exposed to pollens or dust, such things of diseases we can expect in them. So that is the reason occupation is very important. And also the address of the person. Address of the person is important, because you are going to communicate with him in later for the follow-up of the patient or the person. If you are doing the research work, you will have to follow up the person who is involved in your research work, or you have to communicate something to the patient. So address is important. It also is important in one case, like where he resides, what is his locality, what kind of diseases are common in his locality, whether he is near to some factory or industrial area, or is residing in a quite like greeny area or slummy area. So those also give you idea about like what possible disease or exposure the person can have. So for that reason, the knowing the address of the person is very important. Okay. So all these need to be written properly. After this, what are we going to write is your finding, what you have observed. The vital capacity of so and so is so much in standing position, so much in sitting position, and so much in lying down position. In ml, you have to express in ml. Now you have to write the conclusion. Conclusion, what you have to write, what has happened to this vital capacity in standing down position. It is a normal posture, that we consider it as a optimum. So compared to this position, what has happened in sitting position and in lying down position. So this is very important. Here we have to tell what is happened and why it has happened. Okay, why the change is there. Now normally it ranges from 3.5 to 6 liters, the vital capacity. You can also express in ml or in liters also. So this is on an average for an healthy young adults. whereas the value is different in male and female, that we are going to highlight later on. So now what happens in these three postures? What has happened in standing, in sitting, in lying down position? That I'll come little in the next slide, where we are going to discuss the factors which are influencing the vital capacity. So now what is the usefulness of this particular experiment? This recording of vital capacity gives us information about the strength of the respiratory muscle. Okay, because the respiratory movements are mainly because of healthy respiratory muscles. So amount of air inhaled and exhaled forcefully during the recording of vital capacity is mainly the act of respiratory muscles. How strong those muscles are, that idea is given by this particular experiment. Say for example, because of any reasons, the muscle strength is less. Definitely in him, there may be so many reasons for lack of muscle strength. So we'll have to see what are the factors which are influencing this particular strength of the muscles, respiratory muscles, and how the vital capacity is going to get affected. Okay, so this is one of the method used in the laboratories for measuring of vital capacity. Simple method, vitalogy or spirometry, simple spirometry it is called as. Apart from this technique, there are also other methods. Using certain parameters, you can calculate the vital capacity. One among that is height. If you know the height of the person, you can measure his vital capacity using the formula. For male, it is height in centimeter into 25. You can measure your own vital capacity. If you know your height in centimeter, say if you are 165 centimeter, multiply it into 25. That gives you your vital capacity in ml. Can you do it? Yes. For female, the formula is height in centimeter into 20. Okay. Say for example, the girl is 160 centimeter. Okay. If you calculate for her, it will be 3200 ml will be the vital capacity for her. So this is just an example. So irrespective of male, female or whatever configuration they have, if you use this formula for that person, the vital capacity will be correct. So in absence of instrument or laboratory facilities, this method can be used to measure the vital capacity. Next, one more method available using the body surface area. Here, to calculate the body surface area, you will have to know the person's height and weight. Height in centimeter and weight in kilograms. So, vital capacity measured with respect to body surface area is called as vital index. When you measure the vital capacity in respect to body surface area, it is called as vital index. Okay. Again, the formula here is, it is about, for males, 2.5 liters per meter square of body surface area. Okay. So if your body surface area is say around 1.7 meter squares, then per meter square it is 2.5 liters for males, and for females it is around 2.1 liters per meter square of body surface area. Is it clear? So you can use these techniques also whenever like patient is very sick and you cannot shift him to the laboratory or measure the vital capacity. You can use these techniques at bedside just by knowing his height or body surface area. You can easily calculate the vital capacity. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the factors that influence the vital capacity. There are certain factors, conditions, physiological conditions Also some abnormal conditions which we call them as pathological conditions. Which are those which increase or decrease the vital capacity? First we'll see the physiological conditions. As I said, age is an important factor. So as age advances, in older people, if you find the vital capacity is quite less compared to the adults or middle-aged people. This is because there is a loss of elasticity of the lungs in aged people, and also muscle strength decreases. As I clearly told you, it is mainly going to measure the muscle. So in old age, if you compare with the younger people, definitely the vital capacity is going to be less. Next factor is the gender. As we saw using the formula, in females it is definitely less for two reasons. One is muscles. The boys will be very proud to say this, that they are stronger, they have more muscle strength than the female, but nowadays it is not so true. Even girls are quite stronger, right? And build of the person or the body surface area. Body surface area is the one which determines this. We saw the formula. So there again, because of huge body surface area, the men will have more vital capacity than female. The next is build. Well-built person who is fit and fine will have much higher vital capacity compared to the obese and very lean person. Okay, obesity also reduces the vital capacity. Very lean person in whom there is less muscle power, so they will have less of vital capacity. Next factor is going to be posture. This is what is experiment today. We have to discuss this in detail. Posture, as I said, the three postures we used here in this experiment: standing, sitting, and lying down posture. How this vital capacity going to change? Listen very carefully. In standing position, it is maximum. Vital capacity is maximum, and least in lying down position. Why and how this posture affects the vital capacity? You have to understand. It is because when the person is standing, okay, there is maximum space for the lungs to expand. Whether it is vertically or horizontally, it has throughout, it has maximum space for expansion. There is no restriction, no limitations. So he can breathe in and out forcefully and inhale and exhale maximum volume of air. Whereas when the person sits down, what happens is there is some restriction for the diaphragm to move out, because in sitting down position there is a little pushing up of the abdominal organs towards the diaphragm, which will restrict the downward movement of the diaphragm. There the person will get little lower vital capacity as compared to standing position. Next, coming to the lying down posture. When the person is lying down on the couch, what happens here is, so if you consider this is a foot and side, okay, and his back is touching the bed. When he is lying down, if this is a diaphragm, the abdominal organs will be pushed towards the chest wall. In lying down position, the abdominal organs will be pushed towards the chest wall. That will limit the movement, downward movement of the diaphragm, whereas his back is in contact with the hard surface. The movement in posterior region also is restricted. And in lying down position, one more thing happens is there is pooling of the blood in the pulmonary tree. In lungs, there will be pooling, because in standing down position, in standing, the venous blood will be pooled in the limbs, lower limbs. Whereas in lying down position, it will be pooled in the lungs. Because of all these reasons, in lying down position, vital capacity will be minimum or least. This is what we are going to find out by doing this experiment. Is this clear? Am I clear? This explanation is clear? Any doubts? Yes, anyone? Any doubts in this? No doubts? So this explanation is going to be discussed when you are getting this experiment. Procedure is simple, but your explanation matters to get the marks whenever you get this experiment in your practical exams. Understood? So this is the effect of posture on the vital capacity. Any doubt, you can unmute and ask the questions. Fine. So next factor that is important for the vital capacity is your training. Training in the sense it is kind of occupation also, we can say whether the person is athlete, swimmer, diver. So in these people, what happens, they have more muscle strength, especially in chest. Okay, so those persons will definitely have higher vital capacity compared to untrained people. Okay, next factor is pregnancy. In pregnancy, what happens, because of increase in the abdominal size as the fetus grows, that hinders the movement of diaphragm downwards. Okay, so in pregnant lady, especially in 7th or 8th month, if you measure the vital capacity, it will be quite less compared to that age group lady. Okay, so this is like this. There are certain physiological factors which are going to affect the vital capacity. Next, we are going to see abnormal conditions or pathological conditions which affect the, which are all the diseases which are going to affect the vital capacity. Fibrosis. You might have heard this terminology, which is quite common post-COVID. Whoever is getting COVID and pneumonia, it is affecting the lungs and turning out into fibrosis. The lungs are become fibrosed, which will fail to exchange the gases. That part of the lung will become not non-useful. So when certain part of the lungs is non-functional, definitely the volume of air inhaled and exhaled will be less. So this is one condition. Next is the pleural effusion. So any collection of any kind of fluid, whether it is water, pus, blood, anything in the pleural space, that also affect the expansion of the lungs. Emphysema, the lung parenchyma is affected. Pneumothorax, air is filled. Or apart from the lung proper diseases, any other diseases in the surrounding skeleton or the muscles, poliomyelitis, which is a viral disease which affects the or weakens the muscle, in which respiratory muscles are weakened. So the vital capacity will be reduced. Next one is ascites. Ascites is the condition wherein there is a collection of fluid in the peritoneum. Again, there is distension of the abdomen, which will restrict the lung movements downward. So that also going to reduce. So all these factors are going to definitely, all these pathological conditions are definitely going to reduce the vital capacity. Okay, so this is all about the simple spirometry, the aim, instrument used, procedure, observation, how to write, reporting, and we saw the different factors affecting physiological and pathological factors which are affecting the vital capacity. So any doubt in this? Anything is not clear? You can ask the question. Any doubt in the topic so far discussed? when the spirometry, simple spirometry is given to you in the examination, yes, any doubts? It is mainly you are asked to record the vital capacity and see the effect of change in the posture. Any two postures you will be asked to compare with the supine and standing and sitting like this, or all three may be asked. So you should know the procedure proper, instruction how to be given and what precautions to be taken and how you should write your observation and report. Is it clear? Any doubts? So if there are no doubts in this, or even if you are having doubts, you are not willing to ask, when you come to practical from next week onwards, your practicals are going to start and these will be demonstrated and you will be given to perform it. So during that time at least you get these queries clarified. Okay. So I'll move on to the next part of this experiment. We'll come to just a second. Okay. So coming to the next practical, that is recording spirometry. We finished simple spirometry. Now it is the recording spirometry. What is the use of it? What for we are using? What is its principle and how it functions, procedure, and what type of instrument we are using here, and how we are expressing our observation and how we are writing. And then lastly, its significance, use of it, how the values we are using here are helping us in diagnosing the diseases. So we're using this spirometry, recording spirometry. We are going to measure most of lung volumes and capacities. Remember this, most of lung volumes and capacities. You cannot measure all the lung volumes and capacities using this spirometry. This you should underline and clearly understand and remember. All the lung volumes and capacities cannot be measured using this recording spirometry. That's why I said most of lung volumes and capacities. Clear? What is the instrument used here? In our laboratory, the one which we use is, this is called as a recording spirometer. It is called spirometer. Why it is called spirometer? I said why it is called recording now is you can have a graphical record of the movements occurring on this particular cylinder. So this component is same what you saw in vitallography simple spirometer, but it has got another component, another cylinder which moves with the help of the motor, and it is electrically run instrument. Okay, we need electricity to run this instrument. Different knobs are there here, and you have a cylinder again here, the outer cylinder. I was talking about vitallography. In this diagram, it is shown the cut section. This one is outer cylinder, and this whatever you are seeing here is the inner cylinder, and this is the inverted cylinder, which is called as bell, which is again connected to the chain and it runs over the pulley. So here what happens is this outer cylinder and inner cylinder have a space which is filled with the water, and also soda lime is used, which helps in absorption of the carbon dioxide which is there in exhaled air, that has to be absorbed, so that the person is continuously breathing through the apparatus here, so he should not take back his carbon dioxide. So that is absorbed by the soda lime which is added here, and this bell freely moves in the space in the water. Okay, so frictionless movement, smooth movement happens here. Then it is connected to the counterweight here. The bell is connected to the counterweight, which is here in this. There is attachment of pen to the same chain which moves up and down along with the movements of the bell. So this pen will be made to write over the graph paper attached here on this cylinder, moving cylinder. So this graph paper, I'll describe about it, will be pasted over the cylinder, and this pen will go on moving up and down and giving the markings. When the person is breathing in, okay, just imagine breathing in the air he is taking in, so the bell will be drawn downwards. When he is moving, blowing out, it will be moving upwards. So as the bell comes down, the pen moves up. So you will get upstroke during the inspiration. Whatever upstroke you get is during the inspiration. The opposite happens during the expiration. The bell moves up and the pen moves down. So during the expiration, the downward stroke. So this graph gives us the altitude, and there is a time factor here. So I'll describe. This is one of the most commonly used instrument, recording spirometer. There are varieties of modern equipments. This is one of the simple equipment, and also we have computerized, which we use in our department. These can be used in laboratory side and also for the research purposes if you are doing it in the field or something. So these can be used. I was talking about the graph paper which is pasted on the cylinder. The cylinder or the kymograph drum, that is called as kymograph drum. This is called as kymograph. This will be run by the motor. That will be a separate equipment. You will see it in our laboratory. So it will be running on the motor, and this will rotate, and it will have different speeds. These knobs are used to adjust the speed. Slow speed is 2 millimeter per second, and the fastest speed is 17 millimeter per second. Different books gives different values. So whatever our departmental instruments have the speeds that I am telling you, 2 millimeter per second is, it moves, rotates around 2 millimeter in every second, whereas faster speed is 17 millimeter per second. So those two we use regularly for conducting the practical. So this graph paper has got vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, so these will represent, the y-axis represent the volume of air, whereas x-axis represent the time. This is time factor, whereas the height or the y-axis is volume of air. So you can see the smaller divisions. There are darker lines and the thin lines. So this, every fifth line is dark. Okay, each of these smaller squares represent, height wise I'm talking about, represent 100 ml of air. They represent 100 ml. That means if it is one dark square, it reaches up to one dark line, then it is 500 ml. It is 500 ml. And the x-axis I was talking about, the time, it again depends on the speed of the drum it is moving. If it is 2 millimeter, then the scale, time scale will be different. If it is moving 17 millimeter per second, then the time scale will be different. So depending on the speed we are using, we have to calculate the time period. That I am going to tell you later in the procedure. Next, coming to the procedure. Okay, so here again you ask the subject to breathe normally and train him what is he supposed to do. Normally the training is given for the normal breathing, then deep inspiration following normal breathing, then deep expiration following normal breathing, forceful inspiration, forceful expiration. So these things you have to perform and show to the subject, and also make him perform before you go for the recording. Otherwise, if he is not doing technically correct, the values will be less, definitely less. So first train the person, give the proper instruction. Again, he has to put the mouthpiece properly in the mouth, closing the lips tightly, and he should not breathe through nostrils. He should breathe only through this corrugated rubber tube, which is connecting to the inner cylinder. When the air is filled in this inner cylinder, definitely the bell is going to move up and down, depending on the inhalation or exhalation, which is connected to the pulley, and this will move, again move the pen, which will run over the next cylinder and it will write on the paper. So depending on the upward and downward movements, you will get the graphical representation like this. Now, we are, as I said, we are going to measure most of the lung volumes and capacities. So which are all the lung volumes and capacities that cannot be measured using this? The volume which cannot be measured using this is the residual value. The residual value is the amount of air remaining inside the lungs following the forceful expiration. What is the importance of it? All that you have studied in theory class. This will help in exchange of the gases, and it prevents the collapse of the lung. If all the air comes out, then definitely the alveoli will get collapsed. So some amount of air remains even after the forceful expiration. So that is going to help you to keep the alveoli expanded, and also helps in the gases exchanges. So that is a significance. So residual volume is very important. It is around 1200 ml normal value. This its significance and how it is measured. It is measured using the other method like the helium nitrogen method and helium dilution method. There are two different methods. Using those methods, this can be measured. Residual volume can be measured. Then the capacities, to calculate capacities wherever the residual volume is required. So those capacities cannot be measured using this. Which are those capacities? Which are those capacities which use the residual volume for their calculation? Yes?
Functional residual volume, and total lung capacity.
Yes, exactly. So because the residual volume is required to calculate total lung capacity, and which is another one? Which is another capacity?
Functional residual capacity.
So those three things we cannot measure using the spirometry, recording spirometry. All right. So using this technique, we are going to measure static lung functions. There are two different types of lung functions parameters, static and dynamic. Here in this experiment, we are mainly measuring the static lung functions. Okay, what is the difference between static and dynamic lung functions? Parameters is like in static, there is no time factor, whereas in dynamic lung functions, there is use of time factor. So one of the dynamic parameter also we are going to measure using this. The next step I am going to explain you, but remaining all are static lung functions which we are going to measure. So procedure, how you say is, first ask the person to breathe normally. Take normal inspiration and expire normally for 3-4 cycles. Then ask him to keep the mouthpiece in his mouth completely, zip the lips. There should not be any air leak, and clamp the nostrils. So ask the person to breathe normally. Take normal breathing for some time. So you will get the recording like this when the person normally breathing. Okay. Then Next, what you are going to do is ask the subject to take deep inspiration. After the normal expiration, take deep inspiration and again breathe normally. Deep inspiration, what it gives? Inspiratory reserve volume. When the person takes deep breath following normal expiration, it gives you inspiratory reserve volume. Whereas normal breathing, normal inhalation and exhalation gives you tidal volume. Okay. Next we get is, I'll show you this graph. Just a second. Okay. So this will be your observation. So what instruction to be given here is, it will be better to explain with this graph. So ultimately the graph will look like this. You have seen it in most of your textbook. Normal breathing, inhalation and exhalation gives the cycles like this. Okay, after recording few cycles of normal breathing, so this is a tidal volume. After this, you ask the person, either you can record inhalation or exhalation. So exhale forcefully. Exhale forcefully, come back again, breathe normal. This exhaling forcefully will give you expiratory reserve volume. Then ask him to take deep inspiration. Following the normal expiration, take deep inspiration and exhale. This will give you inspiratory reserve volume. Then after 2-3 normal cycles of breathing, ask the subject to breathe in forcefully and exhale forcefully. Both inhalation and exhalation should be forcefully done. This will give you vital capacity. This will give you vital capacity. Again, you go for normal breathing, normal inhalation, exhalation. Is this procedure clear to record all these volumes and capacities? We can record vital capacity by this method also. And you have to calculate other capacities using these more than 2 volumes. Okay. So vital capacity is nothing but the, yes, tidal volume, IRV plus ERV. Functional residual capacity is ERV plus RV. That will not be able to do it. And also total lung capacity also will not be able to calculate in this particular experiment. So this kind of recording is done on slow speed when the drum is moving with the speed of 2 millimeter per second. 2 millimeter per second. So as I said, on x-axis you will get the volume. So it is marked. So you see how much is the height of the curve. Depending on that, you write your observations. How much is the movement of like normal breathing, tidal volume is how much. Expiratory volume from here till here you take. Expiratory reserve volume it comes. Then from here till here it is inspiratory reserve volume, and lung capacity or vital capacity is from here till this tip. So this will be your vital capacity. You see how many squares it is covering and express your value. Normal value, your observation, you write how much it is, and in the bracket how much is the normal value. Say for example, tidal volume is 500. Yours has come 600 or 700 or 300, whatever you get, you write your findings, and in bracket you should write normal value for all the parameters. Is this clear? So these are the static lung functions. Okay, these will not include any time factor. After recording these static values, we are going to record one more dynamic lung parameter, that is called as FEV1. That is called as FEV, forced expiratory volume. This is the fraction of total lung capacity. Okay. which is exhaled in first second, second second, and third second. We are going to measure it. I think this graph is a little blur for you, but if you see your textbook or practical manual, you will see the clear picture. So what is done in this is to record this particular thing. We are going to change the drum speed. It is going to be faster than before. It is going to be 17 mm per second. After doing that, what you are instructing the subject is to breathe normally for 2-3 seconds. Is breathing for few cycles of normal inspiration and expiration. So in the fast moving drum, you will get the cycles like this. Then suddenly you are going to instruct the subject to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, hold it for a fraction of a second, and then start exhaling quickly and completely. This instruction is very, very important. Inhale first, completely inhale. This will be the graph. Then there is a pause. Hold for a fraction of a second. Then exhale completely and fast. So this exhalation has to be complete and quick. So the graph will be shown like this in your recording. Okay, this is inspiration, this is complete exhalation. Now using this graph, we are going to calculate FEV. Okay, so forced expiratory volume in 1 second, because it is a dynamic function. How much of air is exhaled in 1 second, in second, and third second is very, very important to understand the person is having any lung disorders. Okay, looking at the shape of the curve itself, you can assess whether it is normal or abnormal. So how to measure it in first second? So look at the graph. It is completely touching the baseline here. What you have to do is, I think it will be little difficult for me to explain in this. In demonstration again it will be explained. You need to have a scale and pencil. So what you have to do is, from this point, lowest point, you draw a line back, straight line you draw here. Okay, so from this straight line, you have to now come, you take a point from where expiration has begun. Take that point, draw a perpendicular line here. Draw a perpendicular line. Then from this point, you measure 2.5 centimeters on this line. Why I am telling 2.5 centimeter? When the drum is moving at the speed of 17 millimeter per second, here we have to consider the diameter of the cylinder and then measure. When we are using that speed, 2.5 millimeter will become centimeter will be equivalent to 1 second. Okay, that will be explained when we are using the graph and drum speed. Again, you will understand. So it will become 2.5 centimeter equals to 1 second. The time scale is like that in this particular component of the experiment. So we take 2.5 centimeter till here it is. It is the amount of air exhaled in 1 second. So this will become FEV1. Okay, so there is a formula using that. First, we have to see, we have to mark this. From this point to this is complete, it is vital capacity. Total lung capacity. We have to take the fraction of it. So from this point, one parallel line is drawn here. And that will become your FEC. So if you take vital capacity and the FEC, then you will get FeV1 in first second. Likewise, if you take 5 centimeter, that will give you FeV2. If you take 7.5 centimeter, that will give you FeV3. So usually FeV1 normal value is around 80%. Okay, it will be around 80%, more than 80% is normal. Then FeV2 is around 95 to 98. FeV3 is around 98 to 100% of total lung capacity. These are the normal value of FeV1, forced expiratory. Why it is important to measure this? This is not exactly going to help us in diagnosing the disease, but it can tell us what type of disease the person is suffering from. If the FeV1 is less than 80%, we are going to categorize him under having obstructive lung disease. There are two categories of lung diseases, obstructive lung disease and restrictive lung diseases. So this has to be clearly understood in that person what type of disease he has, because causes for these two are different. Causes for obstructive lung disease and causes for restrictive lung disease are different. So we need to understand whether first it is obstructive lung disease or restrictive lung disease. In obstructive lung disease, what happens? The FeV1 is definitely going to be less than 80%, and the ratio of FCV and FeV1 is going to be more. Whereas in restrictive, the FeV1 may be normal. It may be above 80%, but the ratio will be definitely high. So this is how we can differentiate obstructive and restrictive lung diseases. Now, what are the causes for these obstructive lung diseases? Obstructive in the sense, it need not be something within the lungs. It can be outside the lungs. It can be in the heart. It can be in the pericardium. It can be in the skeletal system. Okay, so those factors are neurological. Anything which is obstructing the air passage, those are edema. It may be in the surrounding area, in pericardium, the edema will obstruct the airways, or any neurological disease which causes the spasm of the bronchi, or any reduction in the elasticity of the airway, and any tumor which will restrict the or obstruct the airways. So those we'll call obstructive lung diseases. And restrictive lung diseases can be from the lungs, within lungs itself, or in the pleural cavity, or the skeletal system. As I said, in poliomyelitis, you can have any weakness of the, or any soft tissue soft tissue disease may lead to restriction of the expansion. Say, for example, any pericardial effusion, that will restrict the movement. So that is restriction, restricting the expansibility. Or any abdominal ascites I told earlier, that may limit the movement, downward movement of the diaphragm, that itself, or any neurological disease which affect the muscles, respiratory muscles, wherein there is a restriction for the expansion of the chest wall, which in turn restrict the expansion of the lungs. So like this, there are so many disease conditions which have to be differentiated. For that differentiating, this FeV1 is going to help. So using this recording spirometry, we are going to record most of the lung volumes and capacities which are static in nature. static lung volumes, static lung capacities. Plus, we are also going to measure one dynamic lung capacity, that is FEV1, fraction of the total lung capacity. It is in relation to time, which is going to help us in differentiating whether the person is suffering from obstructive or restrictive lung disease. Is that clear? So this is all for today's theory discussion. So this is a brief initial lecture about two experiments, simple spirometry and the recording spirometry, which will be demonstrated separately when you come to the laboratories, and you will be allowed to perform, record your own parameters, write the report in your record books. Okay, so any doubts in this experiment, you can unmute and ask the questions. We have time, you can ask the questions. Yes. Anybody have any doubt? You can unmute and ask the questions. Any doubts? You have any doubts? Yes. Ishika? Yes. Did you understand? Did you understand the experiment? I know theoretically explaining.
Yes,
Yeah, theoretically it is so difficult to understand the instruments and the procedure, but still I tried my best to explain or simplify the things. Hope you have followed. If you have practical books, you read it once again. Any doubts are there during the discussion or during the demonstration, you can ask and clarify your doubts, because you will have to perform these independently. And in exams also, you will be asked to record these things, interpret your observation, calculate and present your report. Clear? Yes. Mitali?
yes, ma'am.
Mitali is hearing me? Any doubts? Okay. Fine, then we'll see you in the next class. I think I have class tomorrow. I'll be talking about continuing the discussion on central nervous system between 10 to 11. Please ask your friends to join. Okay. So important topics are going to be discussed. I don't want them to miss it. Ask them to join tomorrow. Okay. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are welcome. Thank you.